Hi everybody. This is Robin Patchen. I was going to try to do this from my computer because everything is twisted, like flipped, and the book covers are always backwards. So I apologize the book covers are backwards, but for some reason my computer video did not sound good. So I hope this sounds good. I am here at Avid Readers of Christian Fiction to talk about my book, Generous Lies. And hi, Chloe. I cannot see, the only downside of this is that I can't see the comments as they come in. So and they're going to go really fast. So if I miss a comment, I apologize. I'll do my very best. The first thing I want to do is tell you guys about the giveaways I'm going to do, but I think I'm going to wait and see if anyone else is coming on before I do that. So I'm here to talk about my book, Generous Lies, which is the third book in my Hidden Truth series, and there it is, backwards. Isn't that annoying? I hate that. Oh, shoot. I hope you can still see me. I totally just dropped the phone. All right, well, good. Let's hope that's the worst thing I do during this video. Okay, so I just have to try to fix it now. All right, so I'm going to give away 3 different gift packages. 3 people will win something. So I'm going to give away a full set of my books, the Hidden Truth series. So this is all 4 of them, all backwards covers. So it's Convenient Lies, Twisted Lies, Generous Lies, and Innocent Lies. They are obviously a series. They all take place in a little town called Nutfield, New Hampshire. So I'm going to give away 4 copies, 1 copy of those to one person. One person will win all 4. Whew. And I'm going to sign them. And then another thing I'm going to give away is the downloadable audiobook for Convenient Lies. The audio book just released last month. And so one person will win that, the Convenient Lies audiobook. That's the first book in the series. The other 3 books will come out. Twisted Lies audio releases Tuesday. The Generous Lies audio releases May 29th. And the Innocent Lies audio releases sometime in June, but I don't remember the date off the top of my head. So they're all coming out. I'm very fortunate. I have a company that's doing those for me. So anyway, that'll be the second gift. And the third gift is an Amazon gift card. I would love to be sitting here showing you all my favorite Christian fiction books because I have so many. But some of you may know this. We were actually planning to move. So I've packed up half my house. All my books are in boxes in the garage. And now we're not moving. But we don't really know exactly what we're doing, so everything's staying in boxes in the garage, so I have no books to show you. The only books I have out, really, in my life are my own books because I have to take those to things, and so I don't, but I can tell you a lot about some of my favorite Christian fiction authors, and I'm sure you guys have a lot of the same ones. I love Charles Martin. He's my favorite, and I see Stacy. Hi, Stacy. She's also a big Charles Martin fan. We bonded over Charles Martin a couple of weeks ago. I love Kristen Heitzman. I don't really read a lot of romance, but I love her books. I love Normandy Fisher's books. She's a dear friend, and she writes this beautiful Southern fiction. Linda Goodnight, great writer. Sharon Srock, she's a dear friend, and a really great women's fiction writer. I had a whole list of them, but anyway, I'm not going to read them all off because I talk too much, and I'll be lucky to get this all in an hour. So anyway, and for suspense, my latest favorite suspense is the If I Run series by Terry Blackstock. Has anybody else read that? Okay, I've only read the first 2, and I'm eagerly waiting for the next one. And can't wait for it to rise to the top of my to-read pile. So, hi, Candace. Okay, so anyway, that was that. I was going to tell you a little bit about me. I live in Oklahoma, in Edmond, Oklahoma, but I grew up in New Hampshire. My husband and I are both from Londonderry, New Hampshire, which is used to be a little town. It's not so little anymore, about 40 miles north of Boston. he is a few years older than me, and he was my sister's friend. And it's interesting because my family is actually from Oklahoma. My mom grew up here, and my dad went to high school and college here. And the first time I ever saw my husband, Eddie, I was about 10 years old, and he was about 13, and we were in New Hampshire, and he had on an Oklahoma Sooners jersey. And that's my first memory of him, because I couldn't figure out, there weren't not a lot of OU Sooners fans in New Hampshire, I just want to say. So, really weird. He actually lived in Oklahoma when he was a kid, and I had been for, like 6 months or something, because his dad worked for the FAA and their training centers here. And we had come here every year my whole life because my parents' families lived here. So it was just a weird connection. And then we got married, and I never thought I would end up living here. And here I am. I've been here for 22 years. And I love it. I love Oklahoma. A lot of great people here. So I miss the East, though. And that's why my books all take place in the Northeast, because I miss it. So I write about these stories all take place in a town called Nutfield, New Hampshire. And Nutfield was actually the original name of Londonderry, the town I grew up in. It was founded in the early 1700s, 1725 or something. The town was founded as Londonderry, but prior to that it was always known as Nutfield, so that's where I got that name. So if you go to Londonderry, there's like the Nutfield Country Store, and like little you'll see like the word Nutfield here and there, and that's where that comes from. So, okay, I was going to talk a little bit about how I ended up as a writer, and most of the time people will tell you that most writers will say, "Oh, I always loved to read, and I always knew I wanted to be a writer," and that's not me. Honestly, I didn't start reading for pleasure until I was late in my teens. Prior to that, I didn't love to read. And this is really, I'm kind of embarrassed to tell you this, but the first book that I ever read that I totally loved and wanted to read, that really made me fall in love with reading, was a Judith Kranz book called Princess Daisy. I mean, a terrible book, like definitely not a book I would give my daughter, like, here, read this. But that made me fall in love. That was what I call BC, before Christ, in my life days. And so I wasn't looking for Christian fiction, didn't know there was such a thing, and wouldn't have cared if I had known. But anyway, that's what got me into, that's when I started to love to read. I always loved words, and I always wanted to be a writer, but I was such an insecure child that I didn't tell anybody that. So I sort of, I kept that to myself. You know what I wanted to say as I was telling you guys where I'm from? I want you guys to tell me where you're from. So I would love to see, I probably won't see it all right now, but I want to go back and look at all the comments and see where everybody was from. And also, if you want to win the prizes, I said already, I have 3 prizes. One person will win a set of all 4 of the Hidden Truth series, the Lies books. One person will win a $20 Amazon gift card, and one person will win the audio of Convenient Lies, which just released. So the audio download. So comment and tell me where you're listening from. I'd love to know that. Anyway, when I was a kid, I was so insecure that people would ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I wouldn't tell them the truth. And I think I just was afraid that I would get these sort of like, that'll never work, you'll never do that, you don't have any talent. And I got to tell you, when I was in high school, I never had a teacher tell me I was a good writer. I never had I just really never had any encouragement in that. Probably if I had told people that I wanted to be a writer, then people would have encouraged me, but I didn't tell anybody. I would keep waiting for people to just sort of say, you should be a writer someday. And then I would have thought, what a good idea. But that never happened. So I actually started in college at a little business school, and I was studying hotel restaurant management, and I have no idea why I decided to study that. It's just totally random. And that was a great idea until I realized I was going to have to take calculus in order to get that business degree. And no, there was no way. About halfway through the semester, I was like, okay, business isn't for me. If I have to take calculus and understand it, I'm out. So I transferred out of that little business school, and I went to Northeastern University, which is in Boston, and I decided to study journalism. And honestly, that was the first time I ever even really admitted to the fact that I wanted to be a writer. I thought, up until then, I really never felt like I had anything to say. But I thought, well, if I become a journalism major, then if I'm writing stories, they'll tell me what to write about. I can do this fun thing. And so I studied journalism, and I got my degree. And then after, while I was in college, I realized that reporters actually don't make any money. So that was a blow. So when I got out, I actually got a job in marketing and public relations. And I did that for years until I had my kids, and then I stayed home and raised my kids. And just thought, okay, well, the dream of being a writer, it was never meant to be. I became a Christian when I was about 25, before I had my children. And from there, just went on to try to really spent many, many years just trying to learn what it was like, what it meant to be a believer. I spent a lot of years in Bible study and reading and studying. And anyway, you know what that is. So, and then I would say maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I went through this period of pretty severe depression. And I don't know if anybody else out there has ever done that. I've always been a pretty upbeat person. I've always been pretty even keel emotionally. Or at least that's how I see myself. It's possible that I'm not very self-aware. But I went through a pretty serious time of depression while I was homeschooling my kids. And I was out walking one day, and the Lord said to me that He wanted me to go to my church, and in front of my church, my Sunday school class, we called it a flock, share my testimony. And being the good Christian girl that I was, I said, yeah, I'm not doing that. Never going to do that. And I said, we don't do that in our class. That would be weird. Like, no one ever does that. The next Sunday, no kidding, the guy who ran our flock stood up and goes, I just really feel like we all should just start sharing some of our own stories, share our testimonies. I mean, literally like 4 days later. And I still didn't do it. I didn't do it. And I didn't do it for so long that pretty much everybody who wanted to do it got up and did it, and then it was over. And then that season in my Sunday school class was over, and I never did it. It was about a year. And the Lord brought it back and said, you need to do this. This is the next step in your journey. And I had a lot of stuff in my past that I had never shared. I had been friends with some of those people in that class for like 12 years, and I'd never told them. Like I said, I didn't become a Christian until I was 25. And so I had a lot of stuff back there before that was kind of ugly, and I just didn't tell anybody because I was sure that they wouldn't like me anymore if I did. So I didn't tell. About a year later, the Lord brought that back, and I said, okay. So I said to the flock leader, I said, all right, I really feel like I need to get up and share something next week. Is that okay? And he goes, well, you can just have the whole class. And I was like, no, I'm thinking like 10 or 15 minutes. He goes, well, take as much time as you want. And if we get done early, we get done early. Well, I did not plan to get up and talk for an hour and 10 minutes, which is, what our time was. So, but that week I prayed and I prepared because that's what I do. And I got up and talked. And I stood in front of that class. Some of them were friends. Like I said, they'd been friends for 12 years. And some of them I barely knew. And I stood up in front of them at a podium and just cried for an hour and told them everything. And I just was sure that I was going to lose some friends over that. I thought people are going to think she's crazy. I didn't know anything about that. And I didn't. It was exactly the opposite. And I don't know if you guys have ever done anything like that, shared your testimony and just gotten really honest with people. But the experience that I had was that it gave other people the freedom to be honest with me. And so instead of, I had always had these sort of surface level friendships to a degree. They weren't, I had some great friends, but wow, my friendships got so much deeper, and it was just wonderful. It was amazing what happened through doing that. So anyway, I say that because prior to that, I was so afraid of rejection, that I cannot imagine what having written anything and had anyone read it. But because I went through that process and realized you can be honest with people, there are some people who won't like it, and that's fine, but your true friends will love you. In fact, probably love you more when you're vulnerable with them. So that was a big deal to me. So I started writing fiction when my husband gave me a computer when I was 40, on my 40th birthday, which was a while ago. I wrote my first book. I'd had this story in my head for ages, years, and I thought, I'm going to write that and get it out of my head. It never crossed my mind that I would ever let anyone read it, much less become a fiction writer. But once I started doing that, it was like, I thought, this is what I was born to do. I loved it. I had the most fun in the world. I loved everything about it. So I wrote what amounted to about a 700-page story, 700 pages, yes, in 3 months. And what's hilarious is I thought it was really good. It wasn't. It was really terrible, but I thought it was good. But it made me love it. It made me love writing fiction. And it was from that started this whole process. And that book has never gotten out of the drawer, and probably never will, because I don't have the heart to go back and change it and make it good, because those people seem real to me. But I don't think I can fix it. Anyway, I tried for a long time, so I'm looking at my notes to see what else I wanted to talk about. Okay, so all of that brings me to the book I wanted to talk about today, which is this one. And I know it's backwards, and that drives me crazy. But anyway, it's Generous Lies, and it's the third book in my series, and it has sort of a special place in my heart because the character, the hero in this book, what starts the whole thing is that his son is taken to the hospital because he had a drug overdose. It's really interesting because preparing for this, I watched Heather Gilbert's book club I think it was from last month, and she was talking about the opiate addiction crisis in our country and what a big deal it is, and she saw it from the perspective of a foster mom who was seeing all these children go into foster care because their parents were addicts. I see it from a different perspective. I see it as the mother of a drug addict because my son is an addict. So I'm in his room. Because this is my office because he doesn't live here anymore. And of all the things I packed, I never got around to packing all that stuff. So he was a Boy Scout and a Cub Scout. And you can see my empty bookshelf there that has nothing but 2 books on it, because I had packed everything else. Anyway, Nick, my firstborn, great kid. He was always my most obedient kid, most compliant, most eager to please kid. But when he turned 16, he started smoking pot. And he told us years later that that the first time he smoked pot, he said he felt normal. He said, to me, I felt like I'm normal for the first time, which doesn't make sense to me at all, but that's what he said. And he said, the first time I smoked pot, I thought to myself, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. So that first, he started, we found out a couple months after he started, we basically fought with him, tried to change his behavior through grounding and, all these things for months and months and months, and nothing really happened. We would catch him and he would get grounded, he would get in trouble, and then he would swear he would never do it again, and then he'd get caught again, and we just had this cycle. It went on through the whole school year. It started in August, end of August, and all the way through that school year. Pardon me. And then it was a very odd year because my brother was sick, and so while we're dealing with that issue with Nicholas, we were dealing with my little brother who got diagnosed with liver disease like in August, and that in July rather, and that whole year he was planning to get married. He planned his wedding. They got married on May 31st. On June 6th, JD got sick. They were just about to leave for their honeymoon. He got sick and ended up in the ER And he actually died June 24th. So he was married for 25 days. It was the saddest thing. So in the midst of that, my son, all my kids went to this student conference at our church, where during the day they would paint houses for sort of people who lived in, lower income neighborhoods. They would just paint houses. Anyway, it's a long story. Great thing at Live OKC at North Church. But anyway, at night they would bring in these speakers, and one of the speakers came in, and he just, it might have been a woman. I think it was Mercy Lokatuku, but I don't know how to say her last name, so don't quote me. But anyway, he gave his heart to Christ. And the thing about Nick is everything he does all in. He's the most passionate person that you've ever met. And so just that's how he had been with drugs. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And it was Christ. I'm in. I'm all in. Just like that, he gave up the drugs and he started following the Lord, and he just got involved in the church, and he became this super awesome Christian. We were all so proud of him, and of course still are. I don't mean that to sound like it's past tense, but it was amazing. It was this miraculous transformation, and it went like that from June, right around when my brother died, until April of the next year. That was his junior year of high school. He had a great year. Did really well, but what I didn't know was behind the scenes things were changing, and he had really not dealt with a lot of those things that had originally taken him to drugs. So come around the prom night, he decided, I'm just going to smoke again one time. I'm going to do drugs one time. And that was it. It was like he turned the key and he couldn't turn it back off again. And he was addicted. The good thing about Nick is he knew it, and he came and told us. That didn't really make it easy, but at least we knew he had a problem because he told us he had a problem. And a lot of times people, that's not how they find out. It still was an issue. At one point we had to basically said, you can't live here and do drugs. He was 18 years old. He's a guy. They're much, much harder to do if it's a daughter. So, and I'm not telling anybody how to deal with any of this stuff. Everybody has their own family, their own stuff going on. But this is what happened in our family. We basically said, you can't live here and use drugs. So you can't live here and use the phone that we provide, and drive the car that we provide, and eat the food that we provide if you're going to use drugs. And so he left his phone, and he left his keys, and he walked out. And he was gone for 6 days. And basically homeless for 6 days. And then he came home and agreed to go to rehab. So we thought, yay, we're over the hard part. But it didn't really work out that way. So 40 days later, approximately 40 days later, a little over a month, he left rehab, swore that he was done. He was done with drugs. He was going to stay sober, and he stayed sober for 5 days. And then he relapsed. And when we found out, he moved out again, left his phone, left his car. Only this time he had a place to live. And he moved in with some friends, and we didn't even know where he was living. And it was the hardest thing, because we didn't know what to do. We were totally out of control. I mean, and the thing is if you're a parent, if you're a human, you really never had control to begin with, but you think you do. Especially as a parent, you have some influence over your kids' lives, and the older they get, the less that becomes. And so at this point, we were out. There's nothing we could do. We didn't know where he was living. Couldn't call him. Didn't have his phone number. He would call us every once in a while from people's phones, but it was awful. By the way, I'm going to share a link where he shares his testimony, just so you know that I'm not talking out of turn. This is something that he would not mind me telling you. But anyway. So this is the time that I went from being somebody who had faith, like this much faith, and it just grew and grew and grew. And it didn't grow because God did what I wanted him to do. It grew because, I'm not going to cry, it grew because the Lord sustained us during that time, so that we knew that he was on it. He just constantly said, I'm here. I know. And at one point during this whole process, the Lord said to me, basically, do you trust me with your son? And I said, what else can you say? Of course I trust you, because I don't have any other choices, right? Like, I can't fix it. It's out of my control. So, okay, I'm going to trust you. Well, he was gone. But that was the time that I learned that Scripture is powerful, that prayers are powerful, that the prayers of friends are powerful. Because I had gone through the issue earlier of being really honest with my friends and learning that people love me for me and that it's okay, I wasn't going to be rejected. It was so much easier for me to then tell everybody, pray. You just have to pray. I wasn't ashamed of him. I was scared for him. And so, I had people praying for him all over the place. And at one point, right after we took him to rehab, I went down to a conference, the ACFW conference in Dallas. This was a few years ago. And it's a Christian conference, and so there's music. And so we were singing and praising God. And I had this vision, and I'm not a visual person. If I get a vision, it's God, because I think in words. I don't think in pictures. But this picture was of me, of being held up. I'm going to cry again. And I was being held up by my friends, some of whom were right there with me, and some of whom were on the call right here, watching the video right now. But anyway, that's what sustained us, was our friends and family praying for us during that time. So 3 weeks after he left, on Thanksgiving morning, Nick called me and said, come get me. And I went and picked him up, and he came home and said he wanted to go to rehab again. I'm sorry, I'm crying. I promised I wouldn't want to. I don't even have a tissue. Wait, there's one there. And so I told him when he got home, I said, we've had so many people praying for you. And he said, I know. He said, God never left me alone that whole time. And it was such a powerful... Sorry, Angela, I didn't mean to make you cry. I didn't think I was going to cry. I went through this earlier. I didn't cry at all when I was talking to myself. Anyway, it was such a powerful response, testimony, just that God never left me alone. He was there the whole time. Anyway, this Nick's story ends really well. He went to rehab in another state, so he couldn't call a friend to come get him, And he went to rehab. He lived in sober living. He actually lived what would have been his senior year of high school. He lived most of it away. And he came home, so he left December 2nd. He went to rehab, and he didn't come home again. Except to visit. He didn't move back home until the very end of July. And clean and sober and just loving the Lord. And then his story gets better, because then in January, he went to Youth with a Mission, not this past January, but the one before, in Kona, and learned to be a missionary and went on a mission trip to Alaska and loved it so much that he went back this year as a leader. And right now, as I speak, Nicholas is leading a team of missionaries in Southeast Asia. And I'm not going to say what country, because it's not the most hospitable to Christians, but he is loving it, and he has such an incredibly strong testimony and such an amazing faith, like a passionate faith, because he's lived through all of this. And so I believe that the enemy saw in him what an amazing man he was going to be, and what a force he was going to be, and he tried to take him out, but God is bigger. And anyway, I was going to just sort of give you like the highlights of why I wrote the story about addiction. And then instead I told you my whole big old testimony. So sorry about that. But that's what happens in this book, is the father has to go get his son out of the emergency room. And just so you know, all the events and none of that stuff actually happened in our lives. We had our own stories. I didn't share our stories. I just made up a story. But the feelings and the fears and the worries, those things that Garrison, the hero, goes through in this book, that's what we lived through. And it's interesting because before Nick went to the first rehab place, they didn't have a bed for him right away. And so my husband just went to work and said, I need a week off. And he took our son to New Hampshire to stay with his parents for a week until that bed was ready, because we did not want him to fall back in with the crowd and start using again and change his mind. So he just took him away. That was the spark that sparked this story. What happens when a father takes his addicted son to a new state to try to protect him from drug addiction? That's where the whole story began. I changed it a lot because he's a single father, whereas my husband is quite married. And so my husband didn't have a romance during that time, as far as I know. That was a joke. He absolutely did not have a romance while he was gone. But that was it. So I have Garrison go up to New Hampshire and meet the heroine, and she helps them try to figure out what he needs to do, get into rehab and all that stuff. And that's just one tiny aspect of the story. It's a suspense. And so there's all these other things going on. There's this danger that they don't know because, and I don't want to do any spoilers, but the very first scene of the book, you discover that one of the boy, the addict's name is Aiden, and his best friend is named Maddie, and Maddie actually hides something in Aiden's car, which is actually the dad's car. That is very valuable, and then the dad and Aiden take the car to New Hampshire, and so the suspense comes in because somebody needs to get that package out of their car, and so there's this whole big suspense, and the heroine in that story is Samantha, and she is actually the only character that at the beginning of this series who's a Christian. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit. I just saw that comment, Tina. Yeah, a lot of us have in our family, we have a testimony. We all have our own, Nick and me and my husband. I mean, it was a real thing to walk through. Anyway, I wrote these books. I'm from New Hampshire, I told you that. I wanted to write a series of novels that would appeal to my friends back in New Hampshire, who, many of whom are not believers. And I don't know, are any of you from New England? I haven't been able to watch those comments come through very fast because I get distracted. But a lot of people actually consider New England an unreached people group, because there's so many people there who they just don't know the Lord at all. They don't know anything about Christianity and about Jesus, and so I have a lot of friends back there whom I love, and some of them might be listening, and I wanted to write stories that would appeal to them, that would show a Christian living out her faith without a lot of in-your-face Christianity, because I didn't want there to be anything that people would go, I'm not reading that. I wanted it to be really subtle. So I've actually had some comments, some reviews that say this is called Christian fiction, but there's really no God in it. Well, the further you go in the series, the more you see that. So this is the third book, and Samantha is a Christian. And I'm reading the comments from Sherry there, and that you are absolutely right. That's exactly what God did. Sorry, I got distracted. That's why I can't look at them. Once you get to the third book, we see Samantha's faith, and then in the fourth book, we see Eric's faith. And so, but at the beginning, that really is very subtle, and I did that because I wanted my friends back in New Hampshire and Massachusetts to be able to read the books and find them appealing and not want to put them down. I wanted them to see that there are Christians who are normal and kind and loving and not judgmental and not in your face. So anyway, my next series, the book I'm working on right now, has a lot more faith in it, but a lot more sort of obvious Christian elements in it. But that's why I've had questions about why there's not more of that in these, and that was the reason. But anyway, so that's a little bit about the story that that this is kind of covers. I was also going to talk about, I had some questions, and I wanted to see, and I don't know how many of you have read the book, and so these might not be very good if you haven't read the book, but if you haven't, that's fine, and but if you have, maybe you can chime in. And so one of the questions I wanted to ask, since this is a book club and we're supposed to go through questions, is do you feel like Sam's faith came through in the book, that you could see that she was a believer? And the second part of that question is, do you feel like because she suffers from some pretty debilitating fears. In fact, Sam is an agoraphobic, not to the degree that she can't leave her home. That's a really extreme agoraphobia, but she doesn't leave town. She never leaves Nutfield. And so I guess my question is, does it feel unbelievable to you, or did her faith seem authentic even though she has that many fears in her life? And I think that comments lag a little, so I'll just give a second. I was looking at J.L. Calliston. Yes, to demonstrate Christianity and not preach it. That's exactly, and I'm not saying it very well because I'm talking and people are watching me, but that's exactly what I was trying to do, is show Christianity through the lives and the actions of people who know the Lord, and not just through preaching it. So, Angela, yes, her faith exactly is what kept her going despite her fears. And what was interesting, that's exactly what I was trying to show. And what was interesting with Samantha is it wasn't until her faith was really tested that she was able to overcome it. You know, it's easy to stay. Oh, thank you, Christy. Storyline realistic. Thank you. Oh, and Jessica says, I'm a fear-filled Christian. Yeah, see? Anxiety disorders. I mean, there's a lot of us who suffer with that. And I told you a little while ago about with mine is that fear of rejection was a huge thing for me. Sam's faith sustains her in her issues, but it doesn't fix everything. That's realistic. That's exactly right. That's what I'm trying to show, that Christians have problems too. And in her case, as she is able to stay in her little town and do everything she has to do, and everything is fine, and she is perfectly content to live that way until somebody comes along and pushes her out of it. And it's this relationship with Garrison and his son that pushes her, and it's not until she gets pushed that she gets out of those fears. And that's kind of how my experience was with my fear of rejection and standing up and sharing my testimony. The Lord pushed me into that, and because he did, I not that I've overcome by any even tiny little bit that have I overcome, but I'm just saying that I overcame to a degree because I did that, because the Lord pushed me out of my little comfort zone. And so that's kind of what happened with Sam. And Tina says, you're only halfway through, but the faith is present. Good. I always worry. I just worry that what I'm trying to say isn't really coming through. So that's good to know. Okay, that was one question. My handwriting is awful. I'm trying to read this question. Did you see Garrison grow in his faith during this story? And he's not a Christian at all, but Sam is, and he likes her a lot, so he listens to what she has to say. So I wonder, did you see him growing in his faith, and did you feel like he was on his way to coming to Christ? And Frida says, anxiety disorder doesn't mean you don't have faith. That's right. That's right. You know, and we all come to our faith in different places in our own lives, and the Lord just meets us in all of our own issues. So I think that's one of the things a lot of times non-believers don't understand, is that we bring our prejudices and our sins and all that crap. Pardon me, sorry. I'm a New Englander. Crap is a good word up there. There's worse words if you lived in Boston as long as I did. Okay, Christy says he was open and curious, which led to him seeking. That's what I was trying to show. I was trying to show that he was going to be open to that, and in the story. So I feel like I was in the middle of saying something and I got distracted because of his comment. So sorry. I do that sometimes. In case you were curious, I have to have a cup because I spill everything multiple times a day. So I'm not allowed to drink anything without a lid. That's how I protect my electronics and carpet. So is that just me? I'm kind of klutzy. Okay, and then I was going to ask, I had another question. So going back to Sam and her fears, she is so fearful. And then at the end of the story, she kind of does some pretty heroic, dangerous things. Some would say stupid, but heroic things. And I wondered if you guys thought, number one, that was feasible and realistic, but also what would cause somebody with all those fears to step out in the way that she did? What did you feel like caused her, enabled her, I guess, to be able to do what she did at the end of the story? And I don't want to give the story away, so I'm going to leave it sort of generalized like that and see if anybody read all the way to the end. It was hard to write that because she was so anxious, and I really wanted her to redeem that. I really wanted her to overcome some of those fears. Not that she totally does, and you get to see if you get all the way through all 4 books. There's a link at the end of the 4th book that you can go download a free story, and it sort of gives you a little bit more hints about what happened with Samantha and Garrison and where that story goes. You know, a lot of times these things end, people will end every romance, with a proposal or a wedding. And that's just not really realistic. And so I don't do that, but I really wanted to show how their story ended, because Sam was one of the only characters that really was there at the very beginning and all the way through to the end, very strong. So Angela hasn't read all the way yet, which that's fine. The reason that I had let me see if I can do this. The way that I have her overcoming is the way I see Sam is that she is very anxious when she is worried about herself, her own safety and her own comfort, her own stuff. But when it becomes about the people that she loves and their safety, she doesn't worry about her own anymore. When it became between, if I have to put myself in danger to make sure they're okay, she was able to do it. The way that she overcame was by focusing on, I think, I'm the author, but other people might have different opinions about this, but she overcame because she loved other people more than she loved herself. And I love that. I love that about Sam. It is book 3, Angela. So, Mama Bear mode. I love that, Jessica. That's hilarious. That's exactly what it is. But what's really wonderful is it's not her kids. They're in danger, but she loves them anyway. So, anyway, she's one of my favorite characters that I've ever written because she's just really sweet and kind and generous, but also realistic. She's not just like Pollyanna, and so she's very open about her faith, even though she's surrounded by people who don't share it, who just sort of indulge her because they like her, but they don't share her faith. I think that's impressive. I wish I were more like that. So, all right. So that's that story. It is book 3. I thought I would tell you just a tiny little bit about the other ones. This is the one that starts it, and it's Convenient Lies. And if you haven't read it and want to, I posted a link a couple weeks ago that you can download it for free, and I'm going to go ahead and post it again. Angela, yes, anxiety is part of being a parent. That's exactly right. I think that not that I don't deal with fear. Fear of rejection was always my biggest one. Fear of failure, but even for me, the failure was always linked to the rejection. But when you have children, all of a sudden it's like, they're just so vulnerable. I remember when Nick was born, this one, I thought, someone's going to steal him. I was terrified. I really thought he's the most beautiful baby that was ever born. And I knew intellectually that probably wasn't true, but I was sure that someone was going to just follow me home and steal him. Am I alone? Am I the only person who thought that way? And, anxiety is... And don't you think that being a parent, don't you think to some degree that God gives us children so that we can learn to trust Him more? because I would never have had the faith that I have apart from my children. And oftentimes they are the reason, oftentimes they're the reason I'm on my knees. Is that just me? My oldest is almost 21 now, but for many years I had 3 teenagers. Christy says amen. 3 teenagers at the same time. And my teenagers are not like maybe your teenagers are awesome. I'm just telling you that my teenagers are not the easiest kids in the world. They are hard. Oh yeah, Jessica's, we can understand how he feels about us. How love can make you go to extraordinary lengths. That's exactly right. And when my son was lost in his addiction, I learned to pray. I learned what it meant to pray continually. You read that in Philippians, right? Pray continually. You're like, that's impossible. It's not. I've done it. When you just go through your day and every other thought is about this loved one that you're fearful about. And instead of just sitting there and being afraid, which is useless, I thought, I am going to turn every single one of those fears into prayer. And that's what I did all day long. I just walked around and just I would just look around and be like, I would see other kids and I'd be like, just Lord, let my son find joy again. Let my son be safe. Just constant. Sometimes it was just, Jesus, Jesus help, Jesus help. I probably said that 10 million times. And I found a lot of solace in Scripture. I memorized a lot of Scripture when my son was lost, and I have kept those. When I felt brokenhearted, it was the Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. It doesn't sound right. It never sounds right when I'm trying to say it. Kids teach you faith in the meaning of love, and grandchildren multiply it. Well, one of these days, God willing, I will know that. Not anytime soon, no. I hope I have a few more years before I get there, but I do look forward to babies. Does anybody miss babies like I do? Some of you probably have babies. I miss my little sweet, innocent babies. Anyway, I started to tell you about them. So this is Convenient Lies is free if you want. You can go to my website, which is just robinpatchen.com, and click on subscribe, and then you'll get it free. And you won't hurt my feelings if you immediately unsubscribe. That doesn't bother me a bit. But anyway, you can get it free. It's about a woman who discovers that she's married her arch enemy. And so she takes their newborn, literally I think he's a week old or 2. I should remember that. I wrote it, but I don't remember. But a week or 2 old, and gets on a plane and flies away to try to escape this man because he is a criminal, and she didn't know it when she married him. And she sort of lands in the arms of her first love, and they together have to defeat this sort of undefeatable foe. The second one is called Twisted Lies, and all these books, all 4 of these books, Hidden Identity, see, there you go, you'll love it. All 4 of these books have a kid, a child. So the first one had an infant. This one has a 4-year-old girl adopted. The heroine in this book has escaped to Mexico because people are trying to kill her. Oh, thank you. I liked the ending of that one too, Frida. That was one of those moments where I was like, oh no, I didn't know how it was going to end either, and I was so excited when I figured it out. So my heroine in this book escaped to Mexico because people were trying to kill her. Kind of a long story, but anyway, while she was there, she adopted a 4-year-old, and then the people who were trying to kill her found her and kidnapped the 4-year-old. And so this story is about my heroine, Marissa, trying to get her child back, and it actually has a character from this book who helps her, Nate, and so he becomes a hero in that book. And then Generous Lies, I already told you about. That's book 3. And yeah, Tina, that's true. You raise your kids in a Christian home, but they have their own hearts. They can do whatever they want. It's very frustrating. Sorry, it's too honest, right? Just do what I tell you to do. But anyway, yeah. You raise them right. They still make their own choices. Anyway, that's what this is about. It's about a kid who makes his own choices. And I already told you about that one. And then the last one, this is about one of our other characters, Eric. Eric is a police officer, works for the chief, is in the first book. And the heroine in that story was actually kidnapped and taken into basically made prostitution slaves, the sex slave industry. I can't say that out loud, but and she has escaped, and she has a child, and this story starts when the hero finds this lost little boy outside his house, and is trying to figure out who he belongs to. So it's a really good. I think they're all really good because I really like them. So, and the characters go all the way through. Trafficking, yes, thank you. That's the word. Angela, you read my mind. I was having a really difficult time. A lot of the characters go all the way through. Oh, thanks, Deb. All 4 books. So Brady is the police chief. So he was the hero in the first book, but he's involved all the way through. And Samantha, of course, is the Reagan's best friend from the first book, and hers is book 3. And so you get to watch the kids grow up. And then if you get all the way through and are interested, there's a free novella you can download that tells the very end of the story and sort of hints at one of the heroines that I'm going to write about eventually, who was in this book. Her name is Vanessa, and she is eventually going to have her own book. And I haven't figured out that story yet, so I haven't written it yet, but I'm excited about that. So that's those books, and I hope that you guys like them and enjoy them, and if you do, great, and if you don't, that's fine too. There's so many good books on this Facebook page that you can download and read, and so, find something else that you love. Let's see, what else was I going to do? I wanted to just say thank you to the readers who voted for Generous Lies that we would talk about it this month, and to Avid Readers for hosting this. And I think it's a great group. I love listening and seeing how readers react to books and how they discover books. And I just love watching the conversations about books. Of course, it's my favorite thing, right? It's all of us. That's why we're on the Avid Readers group. So I just wanted to say thanks to Avid Readers. And I already told you I'm going to put a link up when this is over that you can download Convenient Lies for free. And also let you know that if you go to on the Facebook page Tantor, Tantor Audio, there's a giveaway for the Convenient Lies audiobook that's going on for another week or so, and I just thought I'd mention that if you're interested in trying to win a copy, if you like audio. And I said earlier, but in case you missed it, the Convenient Lies audio is out. The Twisted Lies one comes out on Tuesday. Generous Lies audio comes out the 29th of May, and Innocent Lies comes out sometime in June, but I don't remember the date. So, me too, Christy, my favorite Facebook group. It's an awesome Facebook group. So, okay, and if you like my books, and if you like to review books, you are welcome to join my VIP, my launch group, basically, and you can just go to my website, robinpatchen.com, and click, I think it says VIP, I don't know, but it's like actually robinpatchen.com/VIP, and you can join my launch team, and then you'll get to read early copies and get to give me feedback on it. So audio is so great, I know, and I got so lucky because this company wanted to produce them for me, which meant I didn't have to do it, and I got this awesome narrator. Her name is Karen White, and she's so good, and she narrates most of Patricia Cornwell, anyway, most of her books, and that's how I was like, oh, she's really good. So anyway, I think she did a great job. And I would love it if you would friend me on Facebook and keep in touch. It's I love to get to know readers and visit with people about books and about life. And if you might have noticed, I have a lot to say about addiction. So if you are somebody who struggles with that or have a family member who does, I'm always happy to talk about it and visit about it, because we were very fortunate. Our story was hard, but it was short. And a lot of people who go through this go through it for years. And I don't know what to say about that, except that it's hard, and I'm always happy to pray with people, if nothing else, And sometimes, you feel like, oh, that's the only thing you can do is pray. And then, the other side of that is, but it's the biggest thing you can do, because our God is big enough to manage it, right? God has access to places we don't, and he has access to hearts that we don't. So anyway, I'm always happy to pray with you if you are in that situation, or you know someone who is. And I just wanted to thank my writer friends who came on to support me, and all the readers who have, I really have the best readers. Just so always sending me nice notes and encouraging words. And anyway, I just have the best readers. So you guys are awesome and you rock. And it's a miracle of miracles, but I actually got done 5 minutes early. And so I'm going to finish up here, but I will be reading the comments. I'm going to randomly choose 3 people to win the 3 prizes. The prizes were, one person's going to win the 4 paperbacks in the Hidden Truth series that I'll sign and mail to you. One person will win a $20 Amazon gift card, and one person will win the Convenient Lies audio download. So if you haven't commented yet, do that. Let me know where you were. I'm going to catch up on all of them in a little bit here. And I'm also going to leave links for my son Nick's testimony. He has like a 2-minute video that they did at YWAM for him. And so you can see a little bit more about him and about, from his perspective, what he went through and what the Lord's done in his life. And I'm going to link the free book if you want to download it. And I think there was something else. So anyway, thank you, and God bless.